Welcome back. I'm going to go into this a little bit more here. Cosmic cycles. And I'm going to recommend one book here, Mundane Astrology by several authors, Michael Bejan, Nicholas Campion, and Charles Harvey. Now, this is great discussion of astrological and astronomical cycles and some of the mythology that has been associated with some of this throughout the ages. Very fascinating book. Now, there's another book here, a very famous one called The Cosmic Clocks from Astrology to a Modern Science, Michael Gauguin, French. Very interesting book, one of the earlier ones about cosmic cycles as it relates to astrology, because, you see, astrology is something that has a lot of misunderstandings attached to it. For a long time, it's very evident that people watch the stars and watch the sky. And early on in my life, I got kind of interested in astrology, very interested, matter of fact, and I really studied it in depth, and I read a lot of books about a lot of different aspects of astrology, and the more I read, the more I understood, the more it made sense. Now, a lot of people ask, well, okay, well, how that's not possible? Can it work? Well, you know, there was a time when there were people who were very serious. They thought if anybody went faster than 30 miles an hour, something horrendous would happen to them. I mean, people actually believed that at one time. So there's a lot we don't understand. And instead of just trying to say, well, you know, the stars are this way and that means this and that, to look at it a little differently from the point of view of if you research families, their charts, if you research events, things like that happen, you can start to see, well, you know, I notice certain patterns here. Like if I do a family chart, very often, so many interlocking, overlocking degrees, signs, I mean, just a lot, you know, close. A lot of things. So it starts to wonder, well, then if you see something that you don't necessarily have a real explanation for it, and that's where the investigation is. Well, there's some correlation, there's something going on here, and I'd like to find out a little bit more about it. So do some studies. Now, I'll get into astrology in another segment here, but there are cycles of energy and energy distribution in our galaxy, in our system. I mean, I'm using what I know of science and physics and some plain common sense. We look out in the sun, we say, well, there's that sun, and, you know, we take it for granted. But the reality of the sun is, if you look at it just from the point of view of physics, there's this incredible power source. Something just unbelievably astounding is out there. And we look at it, and the reality is, even though from our ego plane we look very much bigger, there's the sun over there, we look at this tiny little thing, the reality is that the sun, like a little tiny atom of the sun, is bigger than our whole life. I mean, so without that actual physical energies that's coming out of the sun, our eyes wouldn't perceive anything. There would be no blood, no heat in our body, nothing. There's nothing. So we actually exist as a result of the sun. It's a very interesting way of looking at it. And it makes you feel really humble. Now, where are we in this pattern here? Now, I've actually been doing quite a bit of research about this, and it seems really clear that actually we are going through a period. Now, I know a little bit about physics, and I've been reading some of these stories, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, if there's a band of like extremely fine grade galactic centrifugal, light coming, cosmic arcs of light in power, incredibly focused around a very, very thin band, around the edge of this galaxy. And we know it may not even be quite balanced because there's different parts of the galaxy. There's something called the Great Rift, which is like a open area there. If we cross through something like that and there's kinds of energy that we haven't encountered, we have never encountered it in recorded history. You stop and think about that for a minute. Never in our recorded history, as far as we know, because this cycle is roughly 26,000 years, we barely even know anything about what happened 26,000 years ago. Except that we know the climate was a lot different. There was a big ice age going on 26,000 years ago. And now, if a disaster happened at that time of such a scale that actually would wipe huge numbers of flora and fauna off the face of the earth, I mean literally wipe them and spread them and push them to the other side of the planet, 26,000 years ago, what would we know of that? Not much. First of all, most of the evidence would be completely obliterated. Face it. And secondly, who's around to say anything about it? Except there were stories. That's the interesting thing. There are oral stories that say, and must have frightened people so that they began to watch the stars for age upon age after age. Now, where does that leave us with 2012 here? Because there could be some amazing things happen. And I had this experience one time where I thought to myself, well, not in my lifetime, but there have been times recently when someone woke up in the morning, or by the end of the day they had heard that a couple of nuclear bombs had gone off. And this incredible thing happened. Just make the whole world silent for a while. And so some negative, incredible thing can happen, a release of energy. Now, what would happen if an incredible wave of good energy was released? What if we crossed through this ecliptic, and among the different types of energy that comes from that central galactic core, the spin, because of this spin, what if some of that energy affected our own brains and consciousness and basically every atom in the solar system, everything got a good basically dose of this thing, this powerful energy? What would happen? Fascinating thing. Now, I can see already that there's been a stream of added information just in the last few hundred years, and it could reach an incredible crescendo of awakening and awareness with practical implications for the rest of what's going on the planet. Now, going on to my next segment.